Hi, this is Keith Farrow, and tonight we're going to be talking about the management of pests without using pesticides. And it's quite an important process doing this because it puts some responsibility back onto the client, your customer. And it also helps you with your management process. Because let's face it, you're going to find very many different sorts of places out there. You'll have really clean ones and really not so clean ones, and ones that look clean but aren't really. And then there's going to be ones that are just open to every sort of pest because there's no way of stopping them getting in, or the situation is such that they're always going to be a problem and be attracted to and live in the area you're dealing with. So having a look at non-chemical pest management is really quite important. So let's get to it. And I've got a PowerPoint here, so we'll have some pretty pictures while you listen to me go on about it. Okay, so let's get to this. Without using pesticide, it is important. So first thing, we have to consider the main points. Attraction. What brings the pest to the location? Why is it there in the first place? Why did it come? And what is attracting it to that place? Access. How did it get in? When it arrived there, how did it actually get into the building? And how is it managing to stay there? And that's the environment. Why the pests not only just arrive, but how they thrive in this place. What is the environmental condition of the property or the situation that says the pests, allows the pests to thrive in that environment? And then how can the risks of pests in this environment be reduced? What can you recommend to your client, and what can the client do, and possibly what can you do to reduce the pest risk? So that is, how do you stop them being attracted? How do you stop them getting in? How can the environment be modified in order to reduce the risk of the pests? And of these, there are actions that the client can do, and these are the actions you must recommend. If you don't, then don't expect much to change, and you'll have a problem. If you've got a problem now, you'll have a problem into the future. So let's go and have a look first bit, attraction. So we're going to look at how the pests are attracted. And the first one that hits the table is light. Pests are attracted by light. Just think of outside on a night time, if you've got a front door light, how many bugs are flying around it. Think of the last camping trip you went on and you had a little gas light there, and the number of bugs that were flying around it and flying into the gas light and getting zapped. Light is hugely attractive to insects. Now, the thing is, they're not attracted to just white light. They're attracted to the blue end of the white light spectrum. So it's the blue part of the light that attracts insects. So that's what the insects see, the blue light part of it. And this has been demonstrated in many cases. So it's an important thing to remember that the blue light of the visible spectrum is that which attracts the bugs. Now, the other thing we've got to remember when we're attracting insects by light, that every hunter around the place that eats insects will also be attracted there. So think of the spiders, which aren't necessarily attracted by light, but which are attracted by the bugs, the spiders that hang around the light. Why are they there? They're not there for the light. They're there because the light attracts every insect around the place. So they're hunting, they build their webs, they sit there because they know that there'll be bugs around there for them to eat. So light is not only just attracting the insect, but it attracts some of the hunters that will feed on those insects after they get attracted. Light is hugely important. The next one is food. Insects and pests will be attracted by food. And these, I'm not just talking about insects here, I'm talking about any form of pest. So we have to include birds, and we will also include rodents here. So food, if we've got a lot of food around that the insect itself really likes to eat and smells and provides the odours that insects know are attached to the food, we will have pests. They will come in because they are there to eat the material that we're providing. And it doesn't matter whether we're deliberately providing it or accidentally providing it, it will be there. So for instance, we are the attractant from a lot of mosquitoes and biting midges because we provide a blood supply. We're warm-blooded, we have a blood supply, and they can find us and they use us as a food source, and we cannot stop that. We can do things about it, but we will always be attractive and provide the food for the insects. Other places they'll just provide food from time to time, and then we've got the problems where the food is there all the time, because food is the attraction, and it's provided all the time for good or bad reasons. So food is very attractive. And the food we're talking about is every style of food and drink, because if we're looking at some of the rodent species, the rodent species we're concerned with, water is, from two of them, is very, very important. Rats need quite a deal of water per day. As much water, they drink as much water as they would eat in a day, if not a little bit more. Mice, no, they don't care about water, but certainly rats do. So water is important. If there's plenty of static water around the place that is just left there, it's open to rodents if they can get in. Fruit. You'll have lots of bugs going for fruit. You'll have cockroaches, you'll have rats and rodents, all sorts of rodents go there. You'll also have fruit flies, ordinary flies. All of these things are going to be attracted by fruit. Grains, well, same sort of thing. You can certainly have rodents with grains. You'll have probably some cockroaches as well, though not so favourite. But certainly stored product pests you will have with grains. And so they are an issue for the urban pest manager. Meat, yep, rodents again, and a whole host of other insects, particularly the flies and also some cockroaches. And then you've got the vegetables, and again we go to the same groups of insects and the same rodent species. They will thrive in those environments with this sort of food. And as you can see, it's all types of food, and this will be fresh, processed, and any sorts of liquid. So that's the food. That's the sort of food we're looking at. We don't leave anything out. Pests cover all food varieties. Now, access. We've provided them with the food. We've provided them with something to attract them there. We've given them the food. How are they going to get in? Well, getting in is pretty easy in a lot of the cases. Those of you who've been up in a ceiling will know that there's spiderwebs up in the ceiling because they can get in around the eaves and the edges, the soffits of the roof itself. And oftentimes when you're up there, you'll actually see the light shining through the little gaps and spaces inside the roof void. So they can get up there. If you think of the front door or the back door of a building, oftentimes there's a small space underneath it, and so the insect or even a rodent can get there, get underneath that door that's sitting slightly off the floor. And you only need, a few millimetres in some cases to a centimetre in some cases. That's the sort of space that they need. They don't need a great deal of space. Interestingly, your customer will bring them home as well. If they bring boxes of food or boxes home from a supermarket or the markets or whatever it might be, from time to time there will be egg cases sitting inside the corrugations of those cardboard boxes, and that will provide them with plenty of eggs to go on with for the next generation of bugs they're bringing into the house, particularly if it's cockroaches and you've got German cockroaches with up to 30 eggs inside an egg case. Bang, you've got an infestation waiting to happen in a very short period of time. People will also bring them back in their fruit, their vegetables when they come from the markets or wherever they might be getting them from, because again, an egg case can be sitting inside there. So they don't have to bring them home every time, but every so often that's all you need to begin an infestation. If you're in commercial environments, the food manufacturer or the food suppliers to the commercial businesses will also provide the insects too. They'll be bringing them in on pallets or in bulk stock arrangements. They'll come in from warehouses, and so they can be brought home by the employees. They can be taken to the fast food chain or the restaurant, and then they can be passed on to the customer from there. You will find they can be carried on your clothing from those places, and you can take them home again. And of course, you only need to take one female with an egg case, and bang, you've got an infestation just waiting to happen. So access and getting there and getting in is not that hard. We provide the getting in because we have the doors, we have the windows, fly screens. How many of you looked at your fly screens recently to see that there's no gaps or holes in the fly screen? So once they get there, they can certainly get in. Now, shelter is also required. Just like us, they need shelter. So where is it that they're going to shelter? Well, they're not going to shelter generally so that you can see them. So it's important for you to think about where the pests you're dealing with hide, and go and have a look for that. Get down, get underneath things, get your head inside the cupboard, look up, look down, move things, get involved. If you don't get in there, you're not going to see where they're hiding. If you're not seeing where they're hiding, there's a reasonable chance, actually quite a good chance, that you're not going to solve the problem. You'll either think they're not there or you'll miss the spot altogether. So look for the places where they're going to shelter. And of course, it's going to be places that people don't generally look. They're going to be under cupboards. They're going to be inside the cupboard in areas where your client or your customer is not going to touch. They'll be hiding up right underneath the sink. They'll be underneath the shelving. They'll be actually underneath the cupboard in behind the kickboard, because they've got a little hole in the back of the cupboard where a pipe or some sort of service line comes through, and they're getting underneath. So all of these spaces can and will be used by insects from time to time. Any crack, any crevice, any little hole, and they will find it and they will shelter in it. So the torch is really important. Knee pads are important if you're going to be crawling around on the floor looking up and underneath things. You will find not only shelter, but oftentimes you will also find food. So get down, get on the ground and have a look. Shelter is important. Okay, so now let's have a look at managing the bugs that we're attracting and letting into our properties. And the first thing we can do is reduce the attractiveness of the light. Now, remember I said that insects particularly attracted to the blue end of the spectrum. Well, they're not attracted generally to the more yellow and red end of the spectrum. So you'll find there are actually insect lights out there that are yellow in colour or have a yellow in colour or have reduced amounts of blue in them, and so they're less attractive to insects. Indeed, if you go around looking at large warehouse areas, oftentimes you'll see they have sort of yellowish, amber yellowish spotlights in the car parks or the areas that are open at night time, and that's specifically done to reduce the attractiveness of those areas to flying insects at night. So light is really quite important, and it is a way of reducing the attractiveness. You can get spotlights on the outside of houses for outside of houses with yellow lights on. You can leave them on all night and bugs won't go around there. Put a white one in there and you'll have every bug within, cooee of the house attracted to that light. So they are really quite important. And they're a good management tool. You don't have to provide them, but you can make recommendations to your client should you think they're going to be worthwhile. Now, interesting to note here, there's research going on right now relating to the use of LEDs. Some of the LEDs on the market have very small profiles inside the blue spectrum of light. They're still white, we still see it as white, but their amount of blue is reduced, and so therefore there's some feeling that LEDs may be able to be used, or some forms of LED could be used as non-insect attracting lights in the future. But the research is still going on, and the verdict is not quite there yet. But interesting one. So light. Think about it if you're managing large commercial areas or if customers are complaining about the bugs. Light. The other thing we can do with light is actually use it to help manage the pest. So these are blue lights and these are insect attracting lights, and what they have is they've got a nasty sting in the tail. Now the old insecticida, where they were attracted into a high voltage grid, is not used terribly much anymore, and for good reason. The insects used to fly into it, they'd explode, and you get bits and pieces of insect all over the place. So I can imagine if they're inside a fast food chain or a restaurant, you've got 100 flies a day exploding all over the cooking surfaces and all over the sandwiches and all over the food. Hardly hygienic. So that's kind of gone. And what it's been replaced with are insect lights that attract them, and the insect actually gets stuck on a sticky board. So these are particularly good in commercial environments, and they're fine around the house as well, no problem. You can put them around the house. But remember, they're attracting insects. So you can't just shove them anywhere, because you could attract insects to areas you don't want them. So for instance, if you've got a barbecue at home and you're getting bugs around the barbecue, sticking one of these over the barbecue to get rid of the bugs is only going to attract all the bugs to the barbecue before they get caught. So think like that. if you've got a little fast food restaurant or a small cafe, sticking one just outside the door will attract all the insects to the door, and not all of them are going to get stuck in the thing before they fly through the door. So this is it's a reasonably complex way of doing the work, but once you get the hang of it and once you've got been trained and see how it works, using light to manage insects is particularly good. It also provides you with long-term benefits because the lights themselves wear out. The UV section of the light won't last forever. Indeed, some of them have to be changed 3 and 4 times a year. Others only once a year or less. And so the light to us will look the same, but what you've got to do is you've got to check it. You can get a UV meter and test the light. And if the amount of UV light's gone down, then the bulb needs checking replacing. And so part of your job could be maintaining the light into the future. And certainly the sticky pads in the lights will need replacing. It also helps you to have a look at how the thing's working. Are you getting lots in a particular light or none in a particular light? And so you can have a look at how they're operating and how the population's going. Is it increasing, getting less? Are you maintaining it? So think of these, and there's a whole raft of them. There's some really good-looking ones that just look like sconce lights, and yet they're actually insect management lights, and others look exactly like they are, something to destroy the insect. But lighting, really important and a very good thought for your future work. Access, probably the big ones are going to be the fly screens. So if you're doing work at a site and they're complaining about bugs flying in, have a look at the fly screens and just let them know that they need proper maintenance because there's a hole in one or it's torn or whatever it might be. The other thing is look at the doors. And can you fit your fingers under the door? If you can fit your fingers under the door, then a mouse, a rat, and certainly a cockroach can walk underneath there. And the light shines out from under that door at night, and so it becomes attractive. So what do? Well, you can do 2 things. 1, you can recommend they put some sort of draft excluder on the door. Or 2, you can actually put the draft excluder on the door. And what you see on the left-hand side of the screen is a bristle strip. Now that what it does, it stops not only insects, but it stops rodents from getting through because they don't see that there's a gap and they can't chew their way through it because it's a bunch of bristles, and so they find it difficult to get through. It also stops light going out. So the insects aren't attracted to it very much, and when they do get there, if they do get there and realise that there's something there, they can't get in because this thing is really tight to the floor. And pest control companies, you're quite okay at putting these in if you wish. So there's no reason why you can't actually go and put bristle strips or other sorts of draft excluder on if you're reasonably handy. Remember to talk to the customer about their shopping. Have they allowed access because they're bringing them into the house? Yep. Look at their shopping bags. Look at where they store them. Look at the cardboard boxes they've got stacked up in the pantry behind the cupboard or somewhere else, and see if the customer is bringing them in themselves. Just have a look at the simple access points and provide them with some ideas on how to reduce the accessibility to the house. Okay, so the environment. These are some pretty extreme environments and some pretty standard environments. You will know what your client's environment is like. If there is food always available, then pests will become a problem and you pretty much can't stop it. Have a look at some of these here and you'll see the food is going to be always available. Now imagine trying to use a cockroach bait in those areas. Why on earth would the cockroach want to eat your bait when it's got this smorgasbord of tons of yummy food available? Yes, you will get some on the cockroach bait, and yes, you will manage to reduce some of the population, but you will never, ever bring it under full control. You will never properly manage it if the situation is such that the food is just out of proportion with what should be there. That also provides harbourage as well. So not only have you got food, but you've got harbourage right where the food is. And so the cockroaches or the particular pest might be living right in the food. And mice will do that. They'll actually live inside bird feeders and bird seed holders and all this sort of thing if you let them. So the environment is hugely problematic, and you'll find a massive range in the work that you're going to be doing, from the absolute squeakiest, cleanest environment to the worst that you can imagine. Remember the water, it's important for rodents. So if there's static water around the place, make sure that you advise your client to get rid of it. Mop it up or have the drainage bit fixed or whatever it might be. Do they have a pet? Where do they leave the pet food? Is it left out all night? Are they complaining about ants on it? Well, move it in. If the pet's not going to eat it, move it. Let the pet have it for an hour and then bring it on the inside. Is there water available outside? Yep, we leave water out for our pet every night. Where's the pet live? Oh, it sits in the bedroom. Okay, bring the water in. Don't attract rats, don't attract cockroaches, and don't attract ants to the pet food if the pet is not going to need it for that particular period of time. Think of all of these things. You cannot change it perhaps, but you can provide advice to the client. Have a look at the pantry cupboard. Have they got stored product pests? Have some of the products been in that pantry for the last 5 years? Are they infesting their own property with product that's been infested for the last umpteen years? Well, probably not 5 years, but at least say, year. All places have a different environment. So look at the environment, and this is where you're going to have to learn to be tactful. Give them advice. Don't judge your client, but tell them they might need to do something, and it would help. It will help both you and it will help your client. And sometimes perhaps they just got to put up with the fact that you want to be there every month to treat it because you cannot do anything else because they are not going to come even part way to solving their own problem. That's a choice you're going to have to make as to whether you just keep going back on service calls or actually try and do something about it. Managing the environment, it's hugely important. So that's quickly where we're at. What I would like to really stress at the end of this is that there's no point in understanding all of this and recognising the problem that your client has or the site that you're dealing with has, and you don't do anything about it. There's no point at all. You have to tell your client what the problem is and give them advice. You can't just sort of pretend that they're going to know about it. They've been dealing with this for some time and now you're there to help them. But don't just tell them, document it. Because when you document it, it's there in writing, and if they get annoyed and they say, look, you've been dealing with this place for now the last 3 months or 3 years and I've still got a problem, then you can go back on your documentation and say, well, look, for the last 3 years, I've been telling you to do the same thing and you haven't. And so we're really at a stalemate. I can continue doing it this way and we're keeping the population at this particular level. If you want it improved, you have to do something about it. And that's a conversation you will need to have with your client. But there's no way you can actually do that if you don't document the information that you're providing them. Because if you tell them, they'll just forget. If you write it down, they'll probably still forget, but you'll have some sort of backup to what you're trying to tell them. And whether it works or not doesn't really matter. But the point is, you've told them, and then you can make a judgment call come sometime in the future when they either get really annoyed, really angry, or want to sack you because you're just not doing the job. And of course, if you can't do the job, the next person is not going to do any better. And indeed, sometimes you'll find when you go to customers, when you get there, they will tell you, oh, look, I've had 3 other pest controllers and they're just terrible, so I hope you're better. Well, you can only be better if it's the other pest controller's fault that the problem continued to go. You can't be better if the major issue is the client. So be prepared to have some good hard talking with the client, sit them down and let them know this is what we can and this is what we can't do. I mean, there was a time back in the day when pest controllers used to actually go in and sort of offer steam cleaning for some of the restaurant chains and that sort of thing that they were doing. And indeed, that's probably still the case because cleaners are involved in the industry now, and so that's possibly the case as well. But think outside the box. You may be able to help them. You may be able to do bits and pieces of physical pest management without the use of chemicals. It is really quite important. It's a very important area of pest management, and it does mean that you're giving them a holistic view of what's going on, because the environment and everything they do to it either helps or reduces the risk of pests in their property. Okay, Great. Thank you for that, and hope you got something out of it, and we'll catch you again in the future. Cheers. Bye.